morning, everybody. So, most of us have had some sort of college experience, right? You guys remember those days? I'm sure you do. And in college, there are most students, and then there are architecture students. And the architecture students, well, unfortunately we don't have it up there, but would look somewhat zombie-like to you. They might be carrying some sort of T-square or model, for instance. So, remember those days? Yes. Normal students, architecture students, big difference. And this is what the architecture students might look like to you. You know, T-square, some sort of model, and they had a superpower. They could sleep in any position, anywhere. The architects are given a special type of training which takes their creative and artistic abilities and marries them with functionality and practicality. And you guys really need this because these will be the people who are putting a roof over your heads, right? Our students are local. They come from all over Malawi. And they're very familiar with the urban context here. Architecture students undergo a grueling process in order for them to become great designers, which is great because we live in a country that has a ways to go in its development. And at the Polytechnic, we like to give the students real-life situations to design for, from their first to their fourth years. And Malawian cities have just so many issues. We're sort of like Gotham City in the Batman movies, minus this guy on a rooftop brooding over the city. As architects, we can observe that Malawian cities are growing at an exponential rate. And during the day, they double, and they get filled with people who are buying, selling, stealing, hustling, you know, selling something to you, but surviving and struggling at the same time. Many cities, or most cities, don't have a set master plan here. And the city boundaries and the land use maps are constantly being changed and altered to accommodate the growth within these cities. And when there's so much poverty in these cities, for example, in Blantyre, 65% of households are living under the poverty line, which is $2 a day. There is constant informality going on. There is, the infrastructure has a ways to go to be fixed. And there's degraded urban environments that they're living in. When designing for these cities, people, the urban planners and the architects, need to understand that there's all sorts of people that we're designing for. People range from the street vendor to the college student, to the tourists, to the rich people, poor people, even the villagers, and people like you and me. So when designing for these places, we need to understand the needs for all these people. For example, everybody needs a place to live. In most urban cities in Malawi, we have permanent conventional housing, and then we have traditional housing, of which most people live in these conditions. They're characterized by poor conditions, polluted, and they also have poor building standards there. People need adequate roads. Now, Malawi has terrible roads, and I'm sure many of you have fixed your car. Terrible roads, and in Malawi, we have the traffic on the roads is growing so much that it leads to congestion, it leads to accidents, and it also leads to pollution. Then we have these guys. We do not like these guys at all. Minibus drivers are notorious for causing accidents, for reckless driving, and for noise generation. People need reliable water and power supply. Thank goodness the lights are on today, right? Power generation in Malawi is from hydropower, and as such, the capacity is pretty low. So we end up seeing a whole bunch of power outages or load shedding. Thank you, Eskom. And the problem is, many times, this disrupts the water supply to cities. And it also disrupts everyday operations as well as damaging appliances. Finally, people need a clean urban environment to live in. The industries in our cities cause lots of toxic waste and many types of pollution, including air and water. Blantyre residents will tell you about the Moody River and its stench that can leave you dead, that can stop you dead in your tracks. So now that we know that these are the characteristics of cities, these symptoms can be found in many cities across Malawi, including Limbe. For those of you who don't know, Limbe is located in Blantyre district in the southern region of Malawi. And, as you've guessed it, it is crowded, it is dirty, it is polluted, it is old. It is a nightmare. There is so much traffic, there is lack of infrastructure or poor infrastructure, and it is a center of trade within Malawi. This made it a prime place for last year's architecture student class, for the 4th years, because it was prime for innovation and ideas. The students were given a project called Limbe Respiring. And in this project, the students had to design a master plan for Limbe, which helped design the place environmentally, socially, and economically. But then they took it a step further. They had to design individual interventions, which tackled an urban issue that was very close and dear to them. But they had one rule. They had to connect all of their interventions either economically, environmentally, and or socially. And this was to create a network of interventions working together to provide a complete and sustainable development of Limbe. So, as an institution, we teach fundamental things about design and architecture, but we teach them theoretically. Because architecture is a very practical discipline, where theory ends, real life begins. So the students went out to Limbe, and they went to see what was happening on the ground for themselves. They took surveys, they performed analysis, and most importantly, they talked to the people of Limbe to find out what exactly was going on. They talked to people like the street vendors, the local business owners, and even Blantyre City Assembly and other organizations that are working within Limbe. After coming back from that, they were able to piece up and create a clear picture of what exactly is going on there. And more importantly, they were able to pinpoint the needs of the people in Limbe. As an educator, I felt it was important for them to get this information firsthand, because how else does one find out the layers and all the little fabrics of the urban fabric? So they went on to design their master plan, and they wanted to include ideas like having boulevards, water reservoirs, proper streets with sidewalks and bike paths, because there's so many people who walk there and cycle. They wanted green buildings with green roofs. They wanted a light rail system which connected Limbe to Blantyre Central Business District. They also wanted pedestrian streets, homeless shelters, and even water harvesting on a larger scale. They ended up producing a promenade which went along the whole length of the Limbe River. And by doing this, they created a green zone. In this green zone, they proposed plants which would filter the water and purify those areas to heal them from what had happened before. They introduced a water feature in Queen's Park, which acted as a reservoir for Limbe. And this was Proposal Park, for those of you interested in going there. They moved all the industrial areas away from the river to keep it clean. And they also introduced more zones like corporate zones, residential zones, market, and retail. And because there were some buildings that were actually functioning very well, they kept some of them. And we had a situation like this. They had ideas like introducing a marketplace, introducing shopping streets, and underground parking, which we haven't seemed to caught on to here, and industrial parking, and open spaces for the people of Limbe. After that, we got to the individual projects. The Innovation Center is a building, or is a project, which filters air as well as water. And apart from bottling the water and selling it, it sends the clean water down to the urban vertical farm. This farm grows produce which it distributes locally. And it services all their interventions which serve food, and in return, they give back organic matter for composting or biogas creation. This place also gave jobs to the people, to the rehabilitated individuals at the homeless shelter. And apart from being a place which is on the river, it's another project on the river, which is also the first point of filtration. before the water gets down to the Innovation Center. It provided programs which would help the homeless in Limbe. Finally, the incomes that came from the jobs created at the urban farm and the entrepreneurial activities at the homeless shelter and other community areas, all of this money was kept at the bank warehouse. This is an institution which deals with microfinance, and it's a place that gives business programs for the local entrepreneurs, as we heard from our first speaker, and also the local vendors. Socially, the heart of the place is Limbe Plaza. This is a project which revamped the whole of the street culture of Limbe by providing restaurants and galleries, movie theaters. You can go on a date at this place, and a nice open plaza, and it was connected directly to the promenade. The other thing it did was it helped to build Limbe's tourism by also connecting to Limbe Hotel and also Limbe Indoor Sports Arena. This is one of the places which provides youth programs for the local youths. Commercially, we had a whole range of projects which ranged from office buildings and business centers, as well as shopping malls and mixed-use buildings. These projects were working together or connected by providing a diverse range of shopping activities for people who are visiting Limbe. And this would encourage them to linger on and contribute to the local economy of Limbe. All the transportation hubs were either connected to the light rails train or the existing train stations there. And they did not only connect in the case of mobility, but they also connected in proximity to the shopping centers. So to get to the place, to get to a shopping center, you had to come through the transportation. And finally, these are the interventions which harvested water and harvested solar and wind energy to distribute power locally to the other interventions. And this is how Limbe was respired. Our students strive to design a built environment for a country which is in dire need of basic amenities and infrastructure and decent places to live and decent places to interact. Cities like Limbe can benefit from this education by understanding that these students know and have studied the many layers of the urban fabric that we live in. Architectural education needs to be tailored to the locality of wherever it's being taught. And it has to connect to the place that it's being introduced in contextually and culturally. I'm glad to say that our department has had an overwhelming response from the authorities of the cities that we work in. And the partnerships that we formed there are very great and they're very sustainable. When this starts to happen, we start to see a very humane and sustainable method of urban planning and urban growth by taking the ideas from within and using them to tackle the problem of the world without. Thank you.